All right. Let me share my screen here really quick. Okay. So before I get started into sort of the nitty-gritty, I want to briefly go over sort of what it is we were even doing in the first place. So we were working internal at AI Camp, not for a third party. And one of the things that AI Camp is doing right now, as it's expanding so rapidly, is filling out a lot of employment contracts. And believe it or not, Rich and I think one or two others do this all by hand. So of course, there's a master list of a whole bunch of different permutations of contracts. But in order to assemble a new contract for a new hire or even a returning hire, Rich would have to go in and look for the different bits and pieces from each PDF that need to go get assembled into the final version, stitch them all together in one program, then open it in another program to type in emails and names and whatnot, and then needs to save it, and only then can it go to the person who it needs to get sent to, and then they need to sign it and send it back. So there's a lot of sort of man hours wasted on something that is not super essential to like actually developing. It's a lot of wasted time on just building these contracts. So our goal was to build a tool that can automate and in a scalable way sort of streamline the process of building these contracts. So the goal is to get the minimum amount of information that we need from the contractor, the person who's going to be hired, enter in that data, and then based off of that, sort of construct an employment contract that can be sent to them. So trying to minimize the amount of time talking back and forth and minimize the amount of man hours spent on it.
All right, so I just want to
So
jump in. I just want to jump in and say that Casper did a great job introduce the project. Right, this is what a presentation should be, right? That is telling a story, telling like why that matters, right? And then dive into solutions, right? Unfortunately, not all our projects or presentations are like that. I just want to highlight Casper, great jobs so far in presenting it.
yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go really quickly over an overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jameson, who did a lot of the research for libraries, as well as into some of the local state laws around work permits and age certifications. Then Lillian is going to talk a little bit about the front end design, and then Muhammad is going to round us off by talking about the back end design. And there are two people who are currently traveling in Europe, so they are not able to join us today, and I will present sort of what they did on their behalf. Okay, so before I jump into before I hand it over to Lillian, in terms of deployment, this is not deployed anywhere because it's going to be used by AI Camp. AI Camp, I specifically talked to Rich about integrating this with Hippo 2, which is going away. So we made the decision not to do that. So this is in a Docker image. That way AI Camp can just put it wherever they want to host everything else. And most online web services or web hosting platforms allow for Docker images to be, or Docker containers to be run and volumes to be mounted. So this tool should be as simple as just pulling the Docker image, running the container, and then we are up and running. All right, so I am going to hand it over to Jameson. And let me run the actual tool because this works in all in the web.
All right. Hi. Yeah, I'm Jameson. As Casper said, I worked a lot on researching into different libraries that we're going to use, researching Gusto and different PDF generation tools. I also worked a lot on the minors, employing minors, and the different laws and legislations that are required for each state to employ a minor. As Casper is screen sharing here, you can see we have all 50 states here in different text files for the tool, which we did it like that instead of putting them all into one single file to make it a lot easier to change if, say, a state updates for legislations. Currently, what the tool is doing is it's taking the inputted state from the website. So, for example, say like California or something, it sends that request to the script, and then it'll output the different legislations that are required for the state to employ or to be employed in that state.
And it's
Um,
worth noting that we did not build a database for this specifically to keep the scale of the project like manageable. We could have involved something like SQL, but building all of the infrastructure to support that, we determined to be more time than it's worth for such a sort of overall small part of the tool.
yeah, and all the different states, like I said earlier, are in their separate text files. So you can just easily switch out any different laws or anything that you need to. Um, I think we changed the script a lot from its original state, or Casper did. So if he wants to show that real quick.
Yeah, so over here, we had originally been planning to give it a name, both an age and a state, and just simply tell the user what exactly they need. So the reason that this has to be done more manually, where it just tells you what the specific law is for that state, is because the states will have some really weird laws. Like I forget which state it was, but there's one that's like you only need a work permit if you're under the age of 16. So not a minor, but specifically under the age of 16, and only while school is in session. And there are some that are like you need an age certification if you're above a certain age, but not below a certain age. So there's all these like weird edge cases that in order to account for would require a ton of like almost wasted time. So we had to change it from our original plan of just giving a state and an age and getting back information to just printing out what the law is for that state. It's not a huge change, and that's something that's always printed here at the bottom whenever you have whenever you're filling out the contract for a minor. But it's unfortunately not as streamlined as an age and a state just giving you the exact information. That's one possible sort of like continuation of this project would be adding in all of the different edge cases for the various states. Yeah. All right. I am going to now hand it over to Lillian, who did all of this lovely front end design.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Lillian. Me and Ryder pretty much coded and streamlined everything that you see. Ryder did a lot more of the connection with the front end and back end and the logic behind it. I did more of creating those input fields and the kind of scaffold for the web app. So as you can see, I added like the name, the email, the the position. And so you see for some of these, they have these drop downs so that, especially for state, we don't have to worry about spelling mistakes. And it's kind of, I don't know how to say this lightly, like dummy proof. So that like if the user accidentally like messes up, it doesn't break the entire code. And then I know Ryder did work on making sure that that email is checked so that if the user puts it in, they check if it's an actual email. And then when the drive link is put, it also gets checked if there's an actual drive link and if there's things being added to that drive link. For let's say the minor fields, they need what is it? Parent signature. The code checks to see if a picture was added to that Google Drive, and it runs. So
Yeah. So this is I'm going to go over this in a little bit more depth for Noah and Ryder who worked on that feature specifically. But yeah, we were really trying to minimize the amount of error that could happen from like typos and like misspellings. The whole goal of this was to put all of the information in one place instead of trying to open all these different applications and fill out different parts of the contract in different stages of building it. We really wanted there to be an emphasis on put in all the information, get something out. All the information goes in one place. It's one thing. And trying to sort of like build up that resilience to make sure that like the user can't, for instance, only enter a little bit of the name and then create a contract, or the email is not valid, or they spelled the name of the state wrong, so they're not sure why they can't get the work permit information for that state, or they're trying to make sure that they have all these documents together, but it's somewhere in a Google Drive, and they think they have everything. Like we're trying to both streamline, collect in one place, and minimize error. And I'm going to turn it over to Mohammed to talk a little bit about how we're generating this contract before I show some examples.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so hi, my name is Mohammed, and I worked extensively on the back end and actually creating the script that takes takes the information from the front end, generates a contract, and fills that contract out with information like name, effective date, and email. So if we like a quick look at the contract PDF list, the way we wanted our code to be as modular as possible. So we did that by basically creating or breaking up a contract into its different sections or exhibits. And each exhibit basically says certain information. And I guess you could say the most important exhibits would be exhibit A, which has to do with the actual program role and all the information about what someone would be doing, like because of their contract, and exhibit B, which is about compensation, as those two things are the most likely to change, while the other exhibits aren't necessarily as likely to change. So the way that the contract generation happens is we take information from the front end about the position and whether or not this person is a minor or an adult, and we generate that contract. And if you want to override like one of the default exhibits, you can just enter like a sandbox mentor, like exhibit H, if you wanted to override exhibit H or whatever exhibit. So that way the code is modular and it's easy to create new roles and new programs without really having to edit the tool like extensively. All you would really have to do is just add a new PDF with, as long as it's named properly, this new PDF will actually generate a new position on the front end as well. If you want to demonstrate that real quick.
Yeah, so if we instead changed Sandbox Mentor, for instance, to DSI Mentor, this is just an exact copy of one that already exists. I'm just changing the name. But then if we reload the front page here, you can see that DSI Mentor has automatically been added as a possible position. One thing worth noting, though, is if we go over here into this app.py, this constant here tells you all of the exhibits that appear on the contract and then all of the exhibits that there have to be a file for. So right now it's telling the program that there's a default page that's going to get placed in the contract for exhibits B1 through H, but there has to be a page, a specific page for exhibit A and for exhibit B. If in the future the contract changed to also require, for instance, an exhibit Z, you would just have to add it to the list here, and the contract tool would not continue generating unless there exists a role, something named that role, that program, and then that exhibit ID. But all you need to do in order to add more possible contracts to this tool is just add the PDFs into this PDFs list, and it's going to automatically update the tool with everything that needs to be updated as long as the proper resources are in here. So no going in and monkeying with lists of names and stuff like that.
That's pretty magical. That's pretty magical. That's pretty cool, guys.
Yeah. So the biggest thing we were really going for with this whole tool is future-proofing it. Because if we want this tool to get used and last a while, then we need to make sure it's able to handle any possible use cases. So now I guess we can actually demonstrate the actual contract generation. Basically what we do is we take all the information given to us from the front end, send it to the contract script, and it generates a contract with all the text overlaid in the right spot. So then we have our consultant name, effective date, and we scroll down to page 14. It also has their email. And it has every single exhibit that we would need for this contract, or any combination exhibits we would need for future contracts as well.
Yep. All right. I'm going to go over a little bit now what Noah and Ryder worked on. So I'm going to switch this over here to the minor view. So that is going to automatically load additional fields because we need to know more information about minors than we do about adults, because we also need their parent or guardian's name and email, as well as the state they live in and their exact age. So I'm going to fill this out as though it were me. My age is 17. I live in California. My parent's name is Bart, and I will enter in a dummy email. The script is only checking to see if this email is of the right format. It's looking for an @ sign and a period. So this technically counts as a valid email. This counts as a valid email. And then I need to go and pull up a Google Drive because for a minor, there is an edge case where we need work permits and parent consent videos before we can hire them. So we need to make sure that at least something exists in that Google Drive. Adding functionality to check for exact file names is something that could be added in the future. That is not currently the case because of how different each state law is. Knowing exactly which files would need to be included in that Google Drive based on the state would be just too much work because there are so many possible edge cases. But if it is determined at some point that like we need that, that is something we can add. So what I've gone and done here is I've deleted the file that's inside of this test folder, and I've entered it here into the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and delete a couple letters off of this drive link here too. And the script is going to tell you the drive link is invalid. Please review your information and try again. I'm going to repaste in the drive link and generate the tool again. It's going to make a request to Google, and then it's going to tell us that generation canceled by the server. The Google Drive contains no files. So then I'm going to go in here. I'm going to upload. Let's just upload something from downloads. And that finished uploading. Now I can click this create and download again. It's going to go through, recognize that there's a file in there. And then when I open this, you'll notice that my name has been filled out here. The effective contract date has been filled out there. If we scroll down to the bottom, the name of the guardian has been filled out, as well as the guardian email. And then if there were ever more fields more fields on the contract that could be automated when filling out, we would have to add their exact X and Y positions to this list of constants. That's because they're using this PDF tool. There's no way of marking like a certain section of the contract to be sort of like, I forget what the term for this is, but there are ways of editing a PDF to make it like a field that a user fills out. That's not something that this library has support for. And if it did have support, whoever adds more contracts would need to go in and manually sort of determine those fields ahead of time, which we think is like more trouble than it's worth. But we have tried to make it as streamlined and easy as possible to just add more spots to fill things in by just updating this list of constants. So if things ever get moved around or more pages ever get added, that can be done quick and easy. And then again, if we add, as long as you add the required pages for a contract, it's going to automatically update this drop-down list here. And if I reload the page, you can see that that one that I deleted has gone away. And then all of these ones marked as default. If you provide a file, for instance, this says default exhibit H minor. If I added one that was sandbox mentor exhibit H, it would override the default exhibit H. And you can basically, since most of these are often unused, right? Exhibit H, I believe, refers to if you invent something or if you have inventions that existed prior to AI Camp, for instance, right? Then those are your property instead of AI Camp's property. Most of the time, we don't use that because there is not a reason to. But if there's a specific program or role where we're hiring people where that is particularly prevalent, all you would need to do is provide an override file. It also makes sure that the date that you enter for the effective contract date is not an invalid date. It has to be a date in the future. And this list here of the different fields gets updated. So every single field is required, but we only want to show the ones for minors when we have selected a minor. And all of this information down here at the bottom about the information for each state is also dynamic. One thing that is worth noting about the state laws is there are sort of two possible like cases of not needing a work permit, right? So it's either not issued or no provision. What no provision means is their state law does not mention it, which means we do not need it. But if they ever add a provision requiring that, then this would be more likely to need updating versus the ones that are not issued, because that means that their state has a law that mentions specifically not needing a work permit. A little confusing on that one. But yeah, that is about it for this tool. You just input all the information, and then based off of the tools that exist inside, or the resources that exist inside of this project, the list of possible positions is updated, the name is automatically checked for validity, the email is, the contract date is, and it just fills it out. All you need to do is send it to the contractor, have them sign it, and send it back. And then again, in terms of deployment, this is all in a Docker container. So all AI Camp needs to do to host this is mount that, take that image and then run the container. And there is an API key that is created for checking the Google Drives. There's information in the README on how to set all of this up, but this is not included in the Docker container. As long as it's stored somewhere inside of AI Camp servers, you can just mount a volume to that Docker container, and it'll just work.
All right, is that it?
Yep.
All
Pretty
right, round of
impressive
applause.
stuff. I think this is really, really impressive. I think this is a project that, you know, like you guys, you know, seem like spend a lot of time, you know, thought through different scenarios and you know, really automate, you know, everything here. So I think, I mean, despite like the color scheme choices, I questioned that a little bit. You know, everything is kind of green. You know, I felt like if I go outside, everything is gonna become like bluish. I don't know. I'm just joking, but I'm saying I think the whole the backhand, you know, make it future proof, you know, thinking about different scenarios. I think these are like a really, really awesome development. So as a client, as an AI camp client, I think this is something we would definitely wanted to use. So Witcher will follow up and try to get this thing, you know, reviewed and deployed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. By the way, if you guys don't have a LinkedIn, you guys should establish your LinkedIn, right? And you should write your experiences, you know, with the demo, with, you know, the product link in your LinkedIn, right? That is something you should do. Yeah.
One thing I want to add very quickly is I believe Lillian went out of her way to make sure this is the exact same green that is on the AI Camp website.
I know
it's the
she
same
did.
accent color. Yeah.
Yeah, I know she did, but it just even the
It's
background,
very green.
right? So it's very, very green, right? But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, right? So ignore me. This is just a joke, you know. I'm not saying anything bad about, you know, the work that you guys are doing. It's an internal tool, right? Internal tool, you know, like it doesn't really matter.